Good afternoon. I'm Maggie Williams, Director of the Institute of Politics. On behalf of the Institute of Politics, the Kennedy School, and Harvard University, I thank you all for joining us here today. Welcome to the members of the Kennedy Library Foundation Board of Directors. We know that your support is essential to the success of the New Frontier Awards. And welcome to the members of the Institute of Politics Board and the IOP student leaders who always grace us with their presence. The New Frontier Awards lift high the legacy of President John F. Kennedy by celebrating outstanding young Americans who embody the spirit of public service that defined the life and the career of our 35th president. I would especially like to acknowledge Dan Flynn, for whom one of today's awards is named. Dan worked in President Kennedy's administration and was the very first director of the Kennedy Presidential Library. The New Frontier Award, wait just a moment. You're not done, Dan. The New Frontier Award for Elective Public Service is also called the Flynn Award in honor of Dan. He is here with us today, and I'd like to ask him to stand or sit for a moment and accept our thanks and admiration. This year's recipients of the New Frontier Awards, Mayor Peter Buttigieg and Kirsten Lodal, truly embody the spirit of the New Frontier Awards. They are young, they are fearless, and they're focused on creating solutions to the significant challenges that we face. Both of our recipients have so much to teach us about using both hemispheres of our brain. They both have dealt with challenges that require logic and creativity, analysis and imagination, facts and feelings. The list of candidates for this award was truly inspiring. A wonderfully knowledgeable and wise committee of community and political leaders, themselves committed public servants, are to be commended for their good humor, their serious evaluation of the candidates, and their commitment to making some very hard choices. And we had so much fun at our committee meeting this year. Heather and I want to thank all the members of the committee for their wisdom and their time and their efforts. Just a few words about my New Frontier Awards committee co-chair, the CEO of the John F. Kennedy Library, and my friend of many years, Heather Campion. Her service and commitment to the institutions that have been built to channel the inspiration and the vision of John F. Kennedy to the next generations have been steadfast and unwavering. Her service to the foundation spans more than 15 years, first as a member of the board of directors and now as its leader. And for an even longer than that, she has served the Institute of Politics with unwavering commitment, and I'm not going to count the years, as a senior member of the staff and now as a member of our senior advisory committee. Thank you, Heather. Many of you are familiar with the word servant leader. Robert Greenleaf introduced this phrase in an essay that he wrote in 1970. Says Greenleaf, a servant leader focuses primarily on the growth and well-being of people in the communities to which they belong. Traditional leadership generally involves the accumulation and exercise of power by one at the top of the pyramid. Servant leadership is different. The servant leader shares power and puts the needs of others first. I believe this servant leader definition describes our New Frontier winners today, and it also describes the man who will present the awards, the Honorable Joseph P. Kennedy III. From the Peace Corps to his work as district attorney here in Massachusetts, to the halls of Congress, he makes himself available to be wherever he is needed. And since many times the Institute of Politics is calling him to be available, and he makes himself available, we are especially grateful for his kind attention. Wherever he can add value, give advice, and fight for others, he makes himself available to serve. Congressman Kennedy represents the 4th Congressional District of Massachusetts, serves as a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. He's leading important efforts to expand access to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, especially for women and minorities and low-income individuals. He's an unrelenting advocate for economic and social justice, and thank God, an exceptionally effective legislator who is not afraid to seek common ground with colleagues across the aisle. And he serves to our benefit on the Institute of Politics on our Senior Advisory Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman Joe Kennedy.
Eat, please. My grandmother, when I had come back from the Peace Corps, was working on for my uncle's last campaign. I remember she pulled me aside, had already given this advice to my twin brother, but said, if you're gonna work in politics, just remember one thing: never stand between an audience and their food. So, eat. Maggie, thank you so very much. I didn't realize my mom had gotten your email address and sent you that introduction, but I'm thrilled that she did. Thank you for that. Thank you more than anything for being willing to take on the challenge of the leadership for the Institute of Politics. I know I speak for everybody here and as a member of my family to say we are truly honored and grateful that you would accept this charge and inspired by the leadership that you've shown since you took over the helm. So thank you very, very much. The person to your immediate right, has known me, I guess, since before I was born, if that's possible. Heather, you are an extraordinary leader, and your commitment to public service and the common good goes back decades, truly decades. We are thrilled to have you as head of the Kennedy Library Foundation, where you work to bring President Kennedy's legacy to a new generation of truly global citizens every single day. We're grateful to have you here, and thank you for all that you do as well. I've had the honor of serving on the IOP's Senior Advisory Committee for a couple of years now, and it's been an extraordinary privilege to be able to get to know some of the students who are involved here at the IOP, who are already charting their own path in public service outside these walls. A number of them were presenting to us at our board meeting a moment ago. They're extraordinary leaders for the next generation. Thank you guys for your commitment to this institution as well. And I also want to thank and acknowledge my fellow senior advisory committee members who are all here today. It's an incredible group, and the fact that you all make the commitment from all over the country to be here and be present for this meeting speaks much about you and much about the institution. I do want to give a special shout out to the person who's now newly joined us, my colleague in the House, a remarkably accomplished young woman, particularly as the youngest woman ever elected to the House of Representatives, but somebody who is not just will be a tremendous addition to the board, but somebody who's grown up through it because she was a student here as well. So Elise, congratulations and welcome. So you all that have been here for the past couple of years are probably more accustomed to seeing my cousin Jack up here at this podium. Since Jack is in Japan, you got stuck with me. He sends his very best, as does his mom, to the individuals who are gathered here this afternoon, and particularly to the awardees. So let me begin just by saying a few words about the Institute of Politics and the Kennedy Library Foundation, whose missions, I believe, are guided by the very same light. These institutions are carrying on a tradition that lies at the very heart of John F. Kennedy's legacy, an unwavering commitment to public service. And the New Frontier Award brings well-deserved recognition to young men and women across this country who quietly set out to create lasting change outside the spotlight. This year's recipients, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, I think I got that right. Sorry, thank you. And Kirsten Lodal, embody the values and principles enshrined in this award. It's their stories, their accomplishments that remind us of why we choose public service. You choose it because it matters. Whatever your story, whatever your fight, you choose public service because it makes a difference. For you, for your family, for your home, for your kids you might not even have yet, so that they grow up in a world a little bit better, a little bit kinder than this one. And this is a particularly poignant moment for that, because across this country, we are now seeing a movement that fervently works to disprove that impact, to minimize, to undermine, to otherwise discredit an American system. But looking around this room, I could never be more certain that those efforts will fail. When we read about the lives altered in the streets of South Bend and the communities served by Lyft, I know not only that President Kennedy's belief in the power of public service has been passed down from generation to generation, but that today it is stronger than ever. Some of you may know that my wife and I are actually expecting our first daughter in a few weeks. And as every parent in this room knows, we are excited, and probably me more than her, more than slightly terrified. But I do know that because of the work of Pete and Kirsten and the work that they have inspired, our daughter will grow up in a brighter world. We are grateful for the service and the example that you both have set. They are role models not just for me, for my family, but for every single one of us. So to our first honoree. His name probably sounds familiar to many of you in this room. At 33 years of age and 3 years into his tenure of mayor of South Bend, Pete Buttigieg made headlines when he came out as the first openly gay executive in the state of Indiana. It was an act of extraordinary political courage, and it made Pete a national name. But what is most remarkable, and what we truly honor here today, is the fact that despite the attention and applause that he has garnered, Pete's focus never strayed from his hometown. He is leading South Bend, Indiana, with a vision of effective and transparent government that is improving the lives and fortunes of his city's residents. During his first term as mayor, he has pursued opportunities for innovation, built vital partnerships across multiple sectors, sought common ground in solving his city's challenges. Under his leadership, South Bend has become a national model for open data policy, providing multiple channels for the exchange of critical information between residents and city government. He's also brought the tools of technology to bear to the work for municipal government, such as his city's 1,000 Homes in 1,000 Days project that addressed the surge in abandoned property and met its goal ahead of schedule. Last week, Mayor Buttigieg was elected to a second term with over 80% of the vote, which as an elected official, during the middle of his first term as mayor, Pete did something few current office holders could have done at any level of government. He took a leave of absence to serve a tour of duty in Afghanistan as a member of the U.S. Naval Reserves. He's a public servant in every sense. Well, some of you might be wondering, if you hadn't come across his name, where you would have heard it before. It was not so long ago. He was a student, in fact, here at Harvard, and he served as president of the IOP's Student Advisory Committee. And when he was still in high school, back in South Bend, he wrote the winning essay at the Kennedy Library Foundation's annual Profiles in Courage essay contest. So, Mr. Mayor, you'll have to forgive us all if we all want a little bit of credit for your success. We know it's probably the other way around. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming and honoring, as we are the FEN awardee for the New Frontier Award, Pete Buttigieg.
Well, thank you. There was a former IOP director who I once saw introduced in a very kind way, and he said that was an introduction that his father would have liked and his mother would have believed. Since my mother is here, I should point that out. But let me just say what a tremendously humbling thing it is to be recognized in this way by a family and a pair of institutions that have done so much to inspire me and to shape my life. And I know that when an elected official uses the word humbled, it's not always totally honest. They usually say that when they're feeling the opposite of humbled. The first time I was really humbled, I had been elected mayor and was getting all kinds of pats on the back, and I was on TV all the time. And just when I felt like I wasn't sure I could handle all the attention I was getting, we were working late one night, and I ran out to get a bite, and I came back to the mayor's office, to the county city building, and it was closed up. And a janitor came through the lobby of the county city building and just cracked the door open a little bit like this and looked at me and said, "You work here?" So that's one kind of being humbled. This kind of being humbled, though, is very real, too, because I'm conscious of the other recipients of this award and can only hope to measure up to that. It is inexpressibly sweet to be able to be here, too, a place that played such a role in my formation, as you heard a moment ago. Difficult to describe what it was like as an 18-year-old from Indiana, just how wide-eyed I was to be in a room with people I admired so much when I was invited up to be part of the Profiles Encouraged ceremony after that essay contest. And then was later given the opportunity, the first honest job I had at Harvard, helping out, take the Red Line down to the library with a brown bag lunch and help go through nominations for the award for next year. And what was so important about that, in addition to the fact that it was a great excuse to go to the library and I needed the pocket money, was that at a time when people were getting more and more cynical about politics and government, you saw story after story of people who, as the congressman said, often quietly and without seeking attention, were doing things that could inspire all of us to believe that public service was a choice-worthy thing to do with your life. Later on here at the IOP, I had the opportunity to contribute to the development of a survey, which I believe still goes on, a yearly survey of youth attitudes on politics and public service. And it was new then, and everybody was asking the question, what's wrong with young people that they want nothing to do with the world around them? And it was that survey that found out that actually, while political participation was nearing an all-time low, community participation was nearing an all-time high. And it changed the whole question from what's wrong with young people that they want nothing to do with the system to what's wrong with the system that young people who clearly care about their communities aren't so sure that politics and elected government is the way to do it. I didn't know when I left here that the way I would make myself useful was in local government. But I now have the job of a lifetime. And let me tell you just for a minute a little bit about South Bend. So my hometown is probably best known for another world-class university that we have in our midst. But the truth is our city didn't grow up around education. It grew up around industry. It grew up around a car company back when the Big Three was the Big Four. And when the last Studebaker rolled off the line in 1963, it sent an economic shockwave through my hometown. By the time I was growing up there, driving and walking and biking past empty houses and vacant factories was so routine and commonplace that I had no idea, actually no idea until I came here, that was not just part of what it was to be in a city. It was just part of the furniture when we were growing up. But it was when I was here that I realized that I was actually from somewhere and began to feel that tug to go home. And found myself running for mayor, and it was 1 week after I ran for mayor that I got a phone call from Catherine Roos, who was on my campaign and went on to be my chief of staff and is here today, a student at the Kennedy School, and one to whom the city of South Bend owes a great debt of gratitude. But got a call saying, hey, the press is calling. They want to know what you think about Newsweek putting our city on a list of the top 10 dying cities in America. That was how we started our campaign. But what we found was that our city was actually ready to believe in itself again if it was just asked in the right way. And in the last 4 years, we've been able to see over 3,600 net new jobs, more than $300 million in private investment. Downtown bars and restaurants have doubled. We've been able to make major strides in the way we keep the community safe with a group violence intervention strategy that actually originated right here at the Kennedy School in the 1990s. We've applied statistical approaches to better serve our residents and customers. And as was mentioned before, we tackled 1,000 houses in 1,000 days. I wish you could have seen the look on the face of my staff when, after a year of very sophisticated and subtle research, I hit the table and said, okay, let's just commit to doing 1,000 houses in 1,000 days. And this brings me to just one of three things I wanted to mention about President Kennedy's legacy and example, which is the power of a target. It was Bernstein, I think, who said that in order to achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time. But it was President Kennedy who showed us by calling on America to put somebody on the moon in less than a decade that you could rally people around a goal like that. And even though he didn't live to see it, the truth is he made himself vulnerable in that moment by publicly committing to a goal that could be missed. And by doing that, rallied an entire nation loyal to his presidency and later on loyal to his memory to do whatever it took to meet that goal. And I learned a lot from that example. Another thing that I think is true about President Kennedy is the importance of generational change. But not just by virtue of being the youngest president to be elected to office. It was an understanding of what generational change might look like. It was actually in his New Frontier speech that he cited Churchill saying, if we open a quarrel between the present and the past, we shall be in danger of losing the future. I believe President Kennedy had a sense of how to mobilize a new generation to lead in a way that was true to the most important aspects of the values of the entire country. And we live in a time when I believe generational change is going to make new things possible, whether it is the beginning of at least hope for a bipartisan consensus that our climate is changing, that something will have to be done about it, and that we may have to bear some cost in order to confront that change. The awareness that the way we handle criminal justice and drug policy, again, an emerging bipartisan consensus, largely driven by a new generation, that we need to change the way we do that. Or the belief that the way people are treated in the workplace and in their lives ought to have nothing to do with who they love or how they love. These are things that I believe a new generation can make mainstream. And I believe it can be done in a way that is not divisive but unifying if we remember President Kennedy's call. And lastly, President Kennedy's call to service, the call that the IOP that had such an impact in my life is a living memorial to. There's something incredibly inspiring about the way that that university experience made him into somebody destined for public service. The idea that politics is not necessarily dirty, that it can be inspiring, that it can be constructive, and that all of us have to have a hand, whether we're running for office or contributing in some other way. I urge people, especially young people in our community, whenever they catch themselves or one another saying, why don't they, or why don't somebody? Why don't they do something about climate change? Why don't they get better leaders into our state house? Why don't they bring this city back? To turn it around, stop, say, why don't we? Or why don't I? And that, of course, has in its DNA the idea of ask not. So I want to offer my thanks not only for today's truly humbling recognition, but for everything that this family and institutions like the JFK Foundation, the Kennedy School, and the Institute of Politics have done, certainly to help this young, awkward, shy, introverted kid come to a place like this, find his voice. And now I'm proud to be among you to join the chorus. Thank you.
You're not doing bad for a shy, introverted kid, Mr. Mayor. And neither is our next honoree. Kirsten Lodal is revolutionizing the way we think and try to solve the challenge of poverty in this country. She's the co-founder and CEO of Lyft, an innovative effort to help low-income individuals and families lift themselves up to more prosperous lives. For Kirsten, it started when she was a college student trying to help one person find a job. And helping just that one person, she realized that there was a huge unmet need, a place where people could go to get help and support with all of the disparate and sometimes interconnected challenges of poverty. Housing, healthcare, nutrition, education, childcare, career counseling, and more. Kirsten decided to build an effective response to that unmet need by connecting people with all of the resources they might need to achieve greater economic security. She might break the cycle of poverty once and for all. Lyft then pairs its clients with volunteers who serve as mentors, not just for a day or for a week, but for as long as it takes for clients to achieve their goals. Whether the goal is find a job, or better housing, or more education, skills training, or all of the above. The organization is constantly innovating, incorporating the latest scientific research into its approach to alleviate poverty. Today, because of Lyft, generations of Americans have built better tools to build their own futures. And community volunteers are building skills and experience to become effective advocates not only for those they serve, but for public policies that can address the challenges of poverty systematically. For Kirsten Lodal, ending poverty is our generation's moon landing. She's inspiring thousands of people to join her in this great challenge. She inspires all of us as well. I am extremely honored to present her with the 2015 John F. Kennedy New Frontier Award.
Wow. So I launched Lyft on my 19th birthday, which was 17 years ago last month when I was a sophomore in college on my college campus. And so it is really special to be receiving this award on a university campus. And even sweeter that one of my favorite professors and senior thesis advisors from college, Stephen Lasson, who's now the Dean of Student Life here at Harvard, has joined us. So thank you for being here and bringing me back. So thank you so much to the Kennedy family, to the committee, to the Kennedy Library and the Institute of Politics here at the Kennedy School for this amazing honor. I accept it entirely on behalf of the more than 100,000 brave and courageous souls of our members with whom we have an honor of working. These are the moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandparents who are doing the truly heavy lifting every day of trying to create a cycle of opportunity in their own families, of trying to really, really ensure that their kids and grandkids have a different future, even when facing the daily challenges, and often those are survival challenges of living in the face of persistent poverty. So I don't take for granted for a minute that my privileged position here comes on the backs of their very hard work. And as for me, I accept this award really as a challenge and an expectation to redouble my efforts to combat poverty and expand opportunity in this country. And it is a poignant time to reflect on President Kennedy's 1960 invocation of a new frontier at a time when our country was facing so many questions about who we were going to be in the world, particularly when it came to issues of justice, equity, racial equity, in particular. And we sit here now more than half a century since our country launched its war on poverty, since the civil rights movement was launched, and we have accomplished an enormous amount. We've prevented so much unnecessary hardship. We have handed the keys to opportunity to so many people, and yet we're also at another, I think, moment of national reckoning. And it's a moment of reckoning in part enabled by the tools of the new frontier and the ubiquity of smartphone video cameras and the way in which social media is leveling the playing field and democratizing our access to the civic arena, where we realize we still have a lot of work to do in this country on those very same issues, particularly around racial equity and economic justice. And of particular concern for us at Lyft is the reality that half of all households in this country that have kids 6 and under are households that are low income or poor. And if we continue a legacy of passing on poverty to those kids, as opposed to opportunity, we're really squandering this country's future, our competitiveness in the world, and the success of this beautiful, beloved, diverse country that we're all in. So I take the New Frontier invocation very, very seriously, and am committed to doing more. I think for any of us who are involved in public service, President Kennedy's call that to whom much is given, much is expected has been foundational, as it's been for me. And a colleague recently shared with me Toni Morrison's adaptation of that, that she shared with some of her graduating students that she was teaching when they were graduating from college and heading into the working world, where she said, "Don't forget that your real job is that if you are free, you must set someone else free. And if you have any power at all, you must empower others." And so I stand here having been gifted and freed and empowered by so many people to be able to do this work. And I'm really so thrilled that a dozen or so of my real backers over the years are here today. These are people who have been investors in even my wildest ideas, board members who've stood by my side as I have made mistakes or had to make tough choices in order to continue the work, and most importantly, teachers of mine. I want to thank my family, represented by my husband, Jeff Himmelman. We have the core of our model at Lyft is that we do pair our amazing individual and family members, as we call them, with advocates who have their back and are by their side to help them achieve their goals, no matter how long it takes. And Jeff is my advocate in chief, always advocating for me to be my best and most authentic self, even whispering to me when I came up, "Drop the notes and just be yourself." So thank you for that. And has also gifted me with 2, soon to be 3, beautiful and brilliant and vivacious little girls, to whom I certainly hope we can pass the New Frontier legacy. And so thinking about the privilege of also being a mom of kids, I would want to close by acknowledging my own mom, who couldn't be here with us today, but who is the ultimate inspiration for everything that I have done, public school teacher, an advocate, an activist, her whole career, and the person who first introduced me to the words of John F. Kennedy and Marion Wright Edelman and Elie Wiesel and Langston Hughes and all of these figures that have built the foundation of really my social justice architecture. And she believed that even as a young child, I was prepared to grapple with some of these big concepts about right and wrong and equity, privilege, but also the fundamental responsibility that we have to give back. So thank you, Mama, for that. I hope I can do the same. And thank you all for being here. Onwards to a new frontier. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't know who arranged for me to follow those two incredible speeches. Thank you, Christian Flynn. I'm going to be very brief. I'm Heather Campion, the CEO of the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation. This is always a very special day here. As many of you know, our two institutions were supposed to be together. The Kennedy Library was supposed to be right about where the Regatta Bar is right now. But somehow, especially today, through these recipients, it feels that while we're not physically together, we certainly are working together in partnership to bring President Kennedy's ideals and legacy to life. I want to thank Congressman Kennedy for coming and doing his family duty, but also for carving his own path in his own way. We all admire him so much and appreciate all he does for these institutions. I also want to say what a joy it is to be running the Kennedy Library alongside Maggie Williams, my longtime friend and colleague, and a tremendous public service servant in her own right. The two of us assumed our jobs at just about the same time, which was a very happy coincidence. And next year we'll be returning the hospitality because this award we alternate each year. So we look forward to welcoming you all to the Kennedy Library next year. But Maggie's been a tremendous partner since day one for me, and we're really excited to be doing more and more together with these two institutions. Today would not be possible without a couple people I have to mention. Christian Flynn, who runs the New Frontier Award program for the Institute. And where are you? Stand up, Christian. And did it really on his own this year, because Ann Aaron, our longtime director, moved home to Washington, D.C., but I'm very happy to say day two on the job, she doesn't get the credit, but Alethea Harney is our new Frontier Award director, and she'll be making it up to you next year, Christian. But everything takes a village, so I just wanted to ask the incredible staffs of the Kennedy Library Foundation, as well as the Institute of Politics, to stand, because they've all done so much throughout the year to help lift up this program. And a special call out to Esther Kahn, who runs the Profile and Courage Essay Contest. And I bet you were here when we picked Peter, right? So please stand, if you would, all of you. So I just want to conclude by saying how John F. Kennedy helped us as a nation to believe that by working together we could achieve great things. And he encouraged us to do that, especially students, by pursuing careers in government and in politics. And he talked about them as noble and exciting ventures. And among the greatest inventions or innovations to come from his time in office was this idea that young people could make a difference. We just recently had the first international symposium about President Kennedy in Japan. Bill Clinton was the keynote speaker and spoke very eloquently about how much of an impact President Kennedy had on his life and that of millions of others. And I think when we stand here today and listen to Mayor Buttigieg and listen to Kirsten Lodal, we're in very good hands with people like this carrying that torch and in turn inspiring others to be public leaders who will step up to meet the great challenges of their time. I want to thank you all for coming. It was a very inspiring day for all of us, and we're honored to have you here.